Well, hello, and welcome to yet again another episode of 25 O'Clock. I'm your host, Dan Drago. Thank you all for being here. Thanks for hanging out. I apologize for the slight lateness of the episode this week. I know it's kind of weird to just get right off the bat apologizing, but hey, let's just get right off the bat apologizing right here. I apologize that the episode's coming out a little late this week. Those of you who followed the, little saga of my life that exists in the first few minutes before the interview starts, you all know that I bought a house and I've moved into it, and it's making me feel all kinds of things. That's neither here nor there. I moved in. We're moved in. Myself and Mrs. 25 O'Clock are moved in the house. It's great. Unfortunately, we do not have any internet yet. So I'm recording this intro not knowing entirely if I will have internet in my house tomorrow. But I'm going to get this episode up to you guys as soon as humanly possible because it's an awesome episode and features an amazing cellist and songwriter named Daniel De Jesus, who just an amazing talent, a really unique guy. And I know I give a lot of credit and I give a lot of shout-outs to this other person here, but he definitely deserves it. I got to give a shout-out and thanks to Steve Harner of Bridge Set Sound for hooking me up with Daniel and getting us together and getting us in a room together to do the show. It was a great talk. And Daniel has become quite a fan of the show. There's a lot of us. He talked to me a lot about various episodes that he liked very much. He liked the Joe Mulholland episode a whole lot. He liked the Barish Kaya episode that came out last 2 weeks ago. He liked the Ben Hughes episode. He liked the Danny Marie episode. These are all things that Daniel De Jesus puts his personal stamp of approval on, and you should go check them out as well. Where can I check them out, Dan? Are you talking to me, or are you talking to our guest, who I guess could also be called Dan? No, we're talking to you, Dan, the host of the show. Oh, well, thank you. I'm glad you differentiated right there. What's your question, mysterious voice? Dan, where can we hear all those episodes that your guest this week, Daniel De Jesus, speaks so highly of? That's an excellent question. You can go to 25o'clockpod.com and everything's on there. The new episodes, the old episodes, my little blog posts about the guests and various thoughts and ruminations that I have each time I put an episode out. There's a page called the Friends and Neighbors page where you can check out links to every guest that's ever been on the show. If you heard a guest on the show and said, man, that guy or gal is really something, I want to support their work. I want to download their music. I want to go look at their art. I want to check out their theater group. I want to hear their podcast or their program. You can do that all from the Friends and Neighbors page at 25o'clockpod.com. There's also a mailing list right on the front page. Toss your email in there, and I send you an email every couple of weeks. Every time I put an episode out, I don't send you excessive amounts of emails, really just one every 2 weeks. It's got my thoughts, my ruminations on the week and the episode, and whatever happens to come to my head when I'm writing the email. So, hey, it's a good way to stay in touch here at 25 o'clock. Anyway, it's been a heck of a week for me here. I am moved into my new house. This evening, I went to the old apartment. Yes, that's a Bare Naked Lady song hiding in there right there, but, try and be mature. I went to the old apartment, and with myself and my wife, we, cleaned, vacuumed, wiped everything down, took the last of the tiny little bits and bobs out of the place. And I don't know, I don't want to get sentimental about an apartment, except that I've lived in that apartment since 2005. I'm 34 years old right now. I moved in that apartment when I was 24 years old. And the difference between me now at 34 and me then at 24 is monumental. It's astronomical. I am a very different person now than what I was 10 years ago. So it's interesting to be standing in an apartment like I was today, completely empty and devoid of all possessions, artwork, anything personalized in the room or the rooms, and to look around and think like, wow, this is what it looked like 10 years ago when we moved in for the first time, myself and my not yet wife, my fiance at the time, who would become my wife. That's what we moved into. And it was a little poignant. I'm not going to say like I got super emotional about it. I tried to be really detached from it. And to tell you the truth, the last year or so in that apartment, in that building, have been pretty unpleasant. But still, it's a place that I lived in for 10 years. We moved there before we got married. That was the place we went back to and called home after we married each other. Celebrated a lot of Christmases, a lot of anniversaries, a lot of birthdays, a lot of Memorial Days, a lot of various holidays and celebrations and things in that house. And I'm gonna miss that apartment a lot. I love my new house. It's the new home base of 25 o'clock. But I started 25 o'clock in that apartment last year. So without really going over too much, I'm going to miss my old apartment in the East Passyunk neighborhood of South Philadelphia. And now I'm just a brief, not even half mile away from where I was, but it's a very different world over here for the better. It's much more peaceful and quiet. It feels more adult. Either that or I'm just getting old and I can't stand noise anymore. Anyway, we're going to get right to it. We're going to get to my conversation with Daniel De Jesus, cellist, songwriter, painter, many other things. But he sent me some links that he wants you all to know about, and I'll reiterate all these at the end of the show as well. But these are links from Daniel De Jesus. This is the email that he sent me to me. He said, "Hey, Dan, I hope this message finds you well. Thank you again for inviting me to participate in your podcast. I loved listening to it, and not just because I am going to be on it. I've been referring many of my friends to it. Daniel De Jesus, you're the man. Thank you so much. Here's some things he wants you to know about. He has a new single called Divine Rapture that's available as a free download at his SoundCloud page. That's soundcloud.com/Daniel De Jesus. That's Daniel, DEGESUS. Daniel De Jesus. At soundcloud.com. He has a new art book out called The Goddess and Her Occult of Beauty. That's the art of Daniel De Jesus from the last 5 years or so. You can get that at blurb.com. So if you go to blurb.com and type in Daniel De Jesus or The Goddess and Her Occult of Beauty, you will find Daniel's book of art. And I'm going to put some images of Daniel's artwork up on the website at 25o'clockpod.com. I can get all of Dan's links right, but I can't seem to get mine right. And also, for those of you in the Philadelphia area, or for people who will be in the Philadelphia area around June 11th, he will be playing at Flannelpalooza Coachella. I can't even say it right. Flannelpalooza Coachella, which is a fascinating little festival that they're doing at the Figment Theater at 1219 Vine Street here in Philadelphia. I'll put a link up for that as well. It seems to be a really cool mix of comedy and music and kind of a lot of off-the-beaten-path stuff. So think of it as kind of like a little mini Fringe Fest in the middle of the summer. So Daniel De Jesus will be playing Thursday, June 11th at Flannelpalooza Coachella. Go look that up on Google. Don't make me spell it. I'll put a link up to it on Friends and Neighbors here at 25o'clockpod.com. Anyway, that's a whole lot of talking. Let's get right to it. Let's get to my conversation with Daniel De Jesus here on 25 o'clock.
I don't want to strip an entire house of wallpaper.
No.
Like every 3 years. Like, why would I do that? Oh gosh, yeah. That's not. It's not interesting at all, though, to anyone else.
Unless you're what I call an HG junkie.
I guess, yeah. But they make it look fun, and it's the joy of time lapse video where it's just like, and it's done.
It's true, but it's the same It's the same show every show.
Oh god.
Yeah.
Those shows just make me scream at humanity. Where they just walk in, they're just like, well, I don't like this house because the appliances are over there, and I'm just like, I hate you. Just like, my favorite is like, well, we just graduated college. We're engaged to be married. We're first-time home buyers, and our budget's $400,000. And I'm just like, what?
Where did you get that money from?
I was like, who died? Like, all of them had, all your relatives had to die.
Yeah.
Like, simultaneously.
Or your parents are just really wealthy.
I don't get it.
It's
I
like,
just like,
and they have college? Don't they have like tuitions to pay back?
Oh, well, you know, that's the American way to just go so far into hock that like you just go into debt up to your eyeballs. Like that's the way to live, apparently. I guess I'm not very American because I refuse
I'm
to
not
live
either.
that way.
Jesus Christ.
Where are you from originally?
Philadelphia, born and raised.
Okay. From what part?
I grew up in an area called Olney.
Oh, okay. So up in north.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 5th and Rockland Street.
Mm-hmm.
And I would hang out on 5th Street near there all the time when I was growing up. And I went to a private school. And I would come home, and on the weekends, I'd go to the comic book shop, Fat Jack's, right on 5th Street.
Oh, down on South, right?
They had a location on 5th and Olney.
Oh, really?
Well,
I
not
didn't know
on
that.
5th and Olney, but like around that area. And there was like a really great music shop, too, called Zaf's.
Oh, okay.
And I used to go there all the time. And I would buy music, and that's where I got my first cello.
Oh, so he was like a musical instrument store.
Mm-hmm. It had musical instruments of all varieties. The upper level was like guitars and amps and drums and all that stuff, and then you go downstairs, and all of the orchestral instruments were down on the lower level, and all the sheet music was down there.
Oh, cool. When did you first like see a cello, like, and what went on in your head when you first saw it?
Well, I first saw a cello when my middle school teacher, Miss Lindy, came and brought her cello. And I already had 2 friends who played the violin. And in my mind, I thought, oh, this is like the violin for boys. This is the one that the boys played, yeah. But I heard my teacher play it, and I wanted to play an instrument for a long time. And I was in a private school in North Philadelphia, and we had people come in to give music lessons, and it was like a separate company because the school couldn't afford a full-time music teacher. And then you'd have to pay extra. My parents were like, we really can't swing this. So I wanted a flute really bad, and that didn't work. And then I wanted the clarinet, and that didn't work out. And then this one lady came, and she offered string lessons, and I asked again, and for whatever reason, it was in the budget. Like, my parents were like, you know what, I think we can swing this. We can do a cello. So I don't know if it was like meant to be in the stars, but it just was the right time, right place in the budget, and my parents were able to go to Zaf's and rent a cello.
Oh, so you did like the rental at first. That's good because you never know if the kid's going to stick with it.
That's a really good thing. Yeah, it is a good thing because, yeah, it's true because it's a big investment. String instruments can be very expensive, and then even if you buy one and you stop using it, it just takes up space.
Are your parents born in America, or did they emigrate?
Both of my parents are from Puerto Rico, and my mother is from Naguabo, and my dad is from a small town called Arroyo. And my mother came to the States when she was a little girl, and so she doesn't have an accent or anything. She speaks, she's bilingual, but she doesn't, when she speaks English, there's no accent. And then my father came when he was 16, so his accent's very heavy. And they met each other in like a church youth group thing, and they've been together ever since.
Are they like musical people?
No.
Or like music appreciators or anything like that? Or
I think they're music appreciators now because I took music lessons, and then that helped them become music appreciators because it was a world that they didn't really know. And it was something that happened because of school. And then subsequently, the teacher I had said I needed lessons with a more dedicated cello instructor because she could only get me so far because she really wasn't a cellist. She was a violinist, but she could teach the cello. She could start a student off, but I had surpassed what she could teach. And so that's when I started working with a different musicians, and my father would go to every lesson, every orchestra rehearsal, chamber music rehearsal, and that's how, as I became educated, he became educated.
Oh, that's great. That's great. What did your dad do?
My father is an upholsterer.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's great.
And his specialty is in antique restoration and, antique furniture.
Yeah.
And right now he works for the Philippine prisons, and he trains inmates.
Oh, cool. Oh, wow. Wow.
And my mother she loves music, but her thing was Motown when she was younger, and she likes classical music now because she was exposed to it through us. I'm talking about my siblings because they all also took music lessons.
Yeah. How many siblings do you have?
I have 3 siblings. I have 2 brothers and a sister.
Where do you fall in the?
I'm the oldest.
Oh, okay. I am too. And you said they all took music lessons?
Yeah, they all took music lessons.
Were you like, so you're kind of like the trailblazer right there?
Yeah.
Where they're just like, well, he seems to take to it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. What do they play?
My brother, although it's only for his own enjoyment, he plays guitar. And then that's David. And then my brother Joey, he plays piano. I know it's unfortunate. I don't really think he plays much anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And then my sister, she started with the violin, but then changed over to vocal performance, and went to college for it. And I thought she was going to be an actress. I thought she was going to do musical theater, be on Broadway, but she got her degree in education, so she's a music teacher now.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So you got a whole musical family. You start a family band.
Yeah, I tried. I really did. I tried to make them all like, let's play a band, let's be a band, let's play music. I got my brother and I to record cover songs of Travis, because we loved that band.
Oh, the British band. Yeah.
Yeah. And we also liked we did other songs like by Coldplay, and I think at the time Everclear. We were really into Everclear. Yeah,
They still are a good band. I've got a couple of their records still kicking around.
For me, that first one is the only one I really.
Oh, the big one.
So Much for the Afterglow, I think is what it's called.
Or Sparkle and Fade.
Sparkle and Fade.
Yeah, the one with Santa Monica on it.
Yeah.
That is, I ran across that in my stacks. I didn't know I had that on vinyl. I don't know where I got it from. And I put it on. This was a few months ago, and I was listening to it. I was like, this record's fantastic.
It is fantastic.
I was like,
I love that
it's
album.
tight, it's poppy. I'm like, it's got some grit to it. The one before it too, which was like their more indie release. Again, like you could hear in that release that they were like, they weren't just going to be an indie band. Like Art Alexakis is a phenomenal pop songwriter.
I think I love his songs.
I'm always curious what they're up to. They played a small gig at Dobbs.
Really?
2, maybe 3 years ago. I was there, downstairs on the the downstairs stage. The place was packed. It cost more than any gig you ever paid to go to Dobbs. And I didn't care, and I didn't care if maybe like the sound was going to be wonky. I'm like, I want to see Everclear with like 100 people. And I think they were getting ready to like go back out on the road or do something like that. So they scheduled like a handful of these small club warm-up dates, and they had played Dobbs like probably back in the mid 90s when like at the height of the alternative rock touring scene,
with Green Day and all those guys.
Yeah, but they were fantastic. Like
good,
and they were into it too. Like I didn't get the feeling that it was like phoned in or they were just doing it for the money. Like I felt like, I mean, I'm sure they liked the money, but I felt like they were really into it and they were really having a good time.
You gotta make a living, and you're a musician.
Yeah,
you should make money from being a musician if you can.
If you can, yeah. I'm always interested in what a lot of those like sort of like, I won't call Everclear one hit wonder because they had more than one hit, but bands like them, Fastball, the Gin Blossoms, things like that. I mean, they pop up every once in a while. There's like some '90s tour going around this summer that's like. Now it's Bare Naked Ladies and the Violent Femmes.
That sounds great.
Which to me, I'm just like, it took my 9th grade summer right there, and just wrapped it together in a neat little package right there.
Oh, how old are you, Dan?
I'm 34.
I'm 33.
Okay, excellent. So we've got some common ground in terms of. There's nothing worse than
And we have the same initials, DD.
I was about to say, as I was reading through your website, you sign things off as DD, which is how I sign things off when I write stuff for the podcast. There's another D. My younger brother, his name's David, so he's also a DD as well. So what kind of music were you listening to? Like, because you're playing the cello and you're probably learning a lot of the canon that they teach string players, probably a lot of Bach and Brahms and Vivaldi and things like that.
Oh yeah.
But then at the time you're also a young person, a teenager, and you're still surrounded by other teenagers and listening to pop music and things like that. And you were from the city, so you probably, I would not be mistaken to say, probably a lot of hip hop and soul and R&B and like hit radio stuff and things like that.
Yeah, the radio station that all the kids were listening to was Q102, and it was like
was that the pop station? I guess they would call that the urban format right now, or whatever.
It was just hits. It was just anything that was considered a hit or a top 40. They just played the top 40 stuff, and it was a mix of lots of different things.
Did you gravitate towards the pop music too, or did you very much have your head in like your classical music as well?
I felt like I lived in two worlds. There was the classical world, which was extremely academic, and I loved it. And then there was the music for that was you just didn't study, you just listened to and you just enjoyed it, and your friends listened to it. But I had a friend for a time in middle school whose father had a huge music collection, and he was a musician. He was a banjo player and a guitar player, and he was a missionary who did a lot of work in Vietnam and then was living in Philadelphia, and he did a lot of work with helping with Vietnamese pastors come and work in the city, and he housed them, and he had an incredible music collection. Like, he loved Eric Clapton. And so his son, I was friends with his son, and he was listening to what his father listened to, but then in turn really got into punk music. And he had so much music, so I would go to his house and listen to his CDs, and that's what began to form my early influences. So probably the first thing that I gravitated towards a lot was the Cranberries, because he had that, and then we would switch over to Rancid, and then we would switch over to Cream, and then we would listen to Green Day, and so like we were listening to all kinds of stuff, and we were like in 7th grade, 8th grade.
It was such a cool time for music too, because it seemed like everything could get on the radio, and there was a lot of variety. For whatever reason, I mean, the more cynical side of me knows that there was a lot of variety because nobody wanted to miss the boat again on like a Nirvana or a Pearl Jam or something like that. So that's how like a band like an Irish band like the Cranberries could get signed, or a band like Everclear could get signed. Even Green Day. I mean, although I still don't consider Green Day really a punk band. They were punkish in the beginning, but they've always just been a rock band to me. I've always felt they channel more the Who than
well, I didn't know what punk was.
Yeah.
So someone's like, "Oh, this is a punk band." I'm like, "Okay." Well,
they're very melodic punk bands. Yeah. Same with Rancid too. Rancid very much just about good, solid, catchy songwriting, and the punk is almost more an aesthetic than anything else.
Yeah. Of course, that makes sense now.
Yeah. And then from Rancid, you can get like deep into the Clash and like all these other. You can start to discover the mixtures of like roots reggae and punk music and things like that. That's how I did it. I discovered the Clash out of Rancid, and then it was all over. I never went back after the Clash.
Oh.
So that's how you discovered some of the bands that kind of slip through the cracks, because there's so much old stuff too. And if you don't get hooked up with the right person at the right time at an early age, when you get older, I can imagine the stuff doesn't resonate as well. Like, I've thought about that a lot. Bands that resonate with me now, because the first time I heard them, I was like 15 or 16 years old, and what it would be like if I had to listen to those bands now at like 34. Would I still be like, yeah, or would I be like, yeah, this is okay?
Yeah, I never say no to anything, or I never say I don't like that, because I may like it later.
Yeah.
And I always like to say, I'm not the audience for that right now.
No, I've
So
definitely got
it's
that. My mantra is that's not for me. Like, and not like that wasn't made for me. That wasn't made with me in mind. And as you get older, you realize that less and less music is even being made with you in mind. And so you're just like, all right, well, it's not me. I feel that way about most electronic music that gets made now, and I'm a big electronic music fan. But a lot of the stuff I hear now, I'm like, yeah, well, it's not made with me in mind.
I'm so surprised all the time at what interests me at certain parts of my life, because
Well, what interests you right now?
Well, what interests me right now is a lot of early music. Like, I'm probably gonna butcher his name, but Miran Marai, who's a early French composer, early music composer. Like, a lot of, for whatever reason, right now I'm listening to like a lot of like Bach, Purcell. I'm listening to Vivaldi, and I'm really interested in like viol music.
In what kind?
Viol music, like early strings prior to the violin and cellos, like gamba instruments.
Oh,
and
like with like harmonic resonators and things.
Well, like they would have sympathetic strings.
Yeah,
and these kinds of things.
Not unlike the sitar or the lute or something.
Yeah,
like that.
so I just listen to that, and I might be looking like I'm banging my head to something really hard, but it's really to Purcell.
Is it rhythmic? I imagine with all the
oh my God, it's wonderful.
Yeah,
it's really rhythmic. It's clever. The ideas seem so modern to me, but I think it's just a different time. It's just a different kind of sound. Madrigals are really cool, but it's all related. Like that kind of music. I just really love. I just really got into it. And,
okay.
And then of course, I have certain things that are really offbeat. So I've been also listening to a ton of reggaeton, and interested in this artist called Yamcha. And then I've been listening to a really weird duo called Die Antwoord.
Oh, from South Africa?
Yeah. They really...
I don't understand that at all.
I love them. I don't know why I love them. I just know I do.
I remember seeing like pictures of them or just like various album covers and like promotional shots and just being like, it looked weird. It almost looked kind of like later Marilyn Manson vibe to it, just in the kind of the weird freakishness of it. And then I heard the music, and it didn't, at least to me, it didn't quite meet the expectation of what I had imagined in my head. And so I kind of walked away. It just, again, it wasn't for me at that particular moment. But I know some people who are super into that.
I love them.
Yeah,
they're so good to me. They're really good.
They strike me as that, like, they have their appeal. If they have their appeal for you, that you can go pretty far down that rabbit hole right there. It seems very specific.
It's really, and I think that's what's always interested me, is anything that's extremely off the beaten path, but it has authenticity.
Yeah.
And for me, at least, they have an enormous amount of authenticity, even though maybe a couple years ago I wouldn't really have given them a second thought.
Yeah.
But I like their whole vibe, and I've seen them play live, and the energy is incredible.
Yeah, I've heard the live show is something to see. And I've seen like clips on YouTube, and I looked at that. I was like, yeah, if I was there, I would probably think that was really cool. I don't know. It just didn't hit me in the moment that it did. But like I said, I have some friends who are super into it, and they're friends whose musical opinions I respect very much. So I'm just like, all right. I'm like, sometimes
maybe someday.
Well, no, it's just I'm like, it clicks for some people, and if it clicks, then like, wow, what a click! You almost get jealous, not jealous, but you almost feel like you're missing out. Like, oh man, I wish that was awesome to me too.
Yeah. Well, you said something about a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
I was one of those people that would listen to nothing else but one particular artist, and
I do that too sometimes.
I was like the biggest Tori Amos head.
There's something about Tori for a certain age of guy, even if you're into the rock music, and because Tori Amos came out like Tori Amos came out the same year as like Smells Like Teen Spirit, like Little Earthquakes and Smells Like Teen Spirit were like being played back to back on MTV. So I remember seeing the videos back to back for that and Silent All These Years. And I remember seeing the video for Silent All These Years. I must have been
7th grade, 8th grade, something like that, and just like kind of just cocking my head to the side and just being like, well, what is this, and why is it resonating with me? Like,
yeah,
in my mind thinking like, this is not what I listen to. And I mean, I'm in 7th grade, I don't even know what I listen to yet, but I'm like, this isn't the thing I like. But I just remember being really captivated by her as a presence. And then later when she put a band together and like you listen like Under the Pink or something like that, you're just like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm a big Kate Bush fan too, so.
Yeah, I'm I have everything.
She has a lot of Frontoria from Kate Bush.
From both.
Yeah.
But Kate Bush I got into later. And as soon as I heard the Hounds of Love, that was it.
That record,
that was it. I was
even with
done.
all its synthesizers and stuff like that. That record should be dated, but it's not. Like,
no,
even like, and I can pinpoint like the technology being used on that record to make this sounds, but she just or her and her producer, who I can't remember his name, but he's very famous and like very integral in.
He's from Pink Floyd, I want to say.
He was in Pink Floyd, or he worked with Pink Floyd?
I think he was in Pink Floyd.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Well, at least the guy who discovered her.
That may be true. I'm trying to think who was like producing like Hounds of Love and the records around that too.
I can tell you right now, there is on YouTube there is a documentary about how that album was made.
Oh, I would watch that a lot.
And it talks mostly to the drummer because a lot of it was
he must have been the producer or something like that, just because the way that they used synthesizers on that record at that time blow my mind. They were so out of the ordinary, and that is what makes that record timeless.
Their string arrangements.
But when you hear Hounds of Love, it's still tuneful and the songs are there, and it almost doesn't matter how they're presented.
Well,
and she sings like,
oh my god,
her approach to singing is just freaking nuts. And again, not traditional, it's theatrical, it's emotive. Did you see any? They haven't put out any video. You know how she did that series of concerts in London?
Yeah,
I want video on that.
Well,
I'll pay.
somebody I'm friends with on Facebook got a chance to steal a few shots on his phone. He took it and on his private phone, and he sent me his links via Facebook, just privately. But yeah, those artists were the ones that showed me how to bridge the academic and then the popular. Like,
definitely.
I can take the academic cello thing and play that music.
Yeah.
And they helped begin, that process.
Well, that was something I was curious about, just because you've got such an excellent backing in classical training, and you've trained with a lot of very knowledgeable people. But then you also have a remarkable pop aesthetic in your music, and I'm just curious where that came about. And did you have to fight against anyone who said like, well, no, this kind of music is not serious. This is the serious music, especially if you're working in like the conservatory world, because you were studying with people from Curtis and things like that. And those guys and girls are very excellent musicians, but I can imagine not necessarily thinking much outside of their own particular boxes.
It happened slowly. I came out of college really wanting to make art. And I went to school for illustration thinking I would be an illustrator, but I sort of caught the fine art bug more so. But I was playing music with bands. And, you play the cello. Can you play in our band? Can you do this with this album? Like, oh, yeah, sure, I can do that. And it just sort of started from there. And then I started writing my own material because I just thought it would be fun. But also I heard different musicians, specifically two albums. The first album that Apocalyptica released.
Oh yeah,
and it was their arrangements for four cellos, and arrangement of Metallica music for four cellos, which blew my mind. And the technique that they utilize to play that music it's just as academic and technically difficult as any cello concerto. And then the other was Rasputina's How We Quit the Forest. Yeah. And that told me, yeah, you can play the cello and sing at the same time. So that was really like, okay, this would be fun. And at first it was sort of more like an experiment rather than anything else. And I just did it because I thought it would be fun to do. But people at school heard my demos and they said, are you going to release this? Are you going to do something with this? Are you going to make an album? And over time, I started taking it more seriously. But I really never had this dream to be like, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to be a musician. I just wanted to be a painter.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to make art. But then I started making music, and more opportunities for music just kept happening. And I just went along with it and went along for the ride.
So when you finished college, was there pressure to like continue on with your artistic or musical education, like from a grad school standpoint?
Not outside pressure, inner pressure.
Oh, from yourself?
Yeah, I felt like I should either do that or just get a job, and just start paying your student loans back, and you only have 6 months.
Right.
And I thought I should do this, but then I eventually did get a job. I got a job at this nonprofit called the Taller Puertorriqueño, which translates to the Puerto Rican Workshop, and that was like my grad school, because there I learned about arts administration. I learned how to speak the Spanish language more proficiently.
Did you not grow up with it I'm sure you grew up with it in the house. Your parents are both fluent, but was that not spoken in the house?
Oh, Spanish was the language of secrets at home. It's the language that you used when you didn't want the children to know about the family affairs.
Oh, that's very interesting. And so they used it as a tool for their own.
I also think it's because they grew up in a time when schools discouraged their native languages. Like my mom grew up in a school where they did everything and anything possible to make you to take that away. Like you're in the United States, you have to speak English. It's really, really important. Yeah. And I think for us, it was sort of like subconsciously still there. So it wasn't something that was spoken in the home. It was this idea like, I want my children to.
They wanted you to
go to school and fit in. So, if we speak English in the home, then they won't have any problems. Yeah.
And I imagine for your father too, it was probably even harder because he definitely could remember more of a life of growing up in Puerto Rico. No, that's interesting. The language of secrets.
That's how I always saw it, because I just would think like, hey, you guys are doing that again. I don't know what you're saying.
Clearly, it's something I'm not supposed to know. Was there ever a point where you knew a bit more Spanish than they thought you knew, and you could kind of decipher a little bit?
I think that was when I discovered where they were keeping the Christmas presents.
That's funny. So you...
hey, guess what, guys? Closet sounds a lot like closet.
It's the same word.
It's the same word.
I can't remember how you say President Navidad in la closet.
I don't know. I just thought it was kind of funny. But yeah, I didn't really learn it until I got this job. And then I also... because I was forced. Like you were forced to really have to engage.
Did they kind of look at you and be like, "Well, how your last name is De Jesus? Why? How do you not speak Spanish?" Was that kind of thing?
That is the third generation story, isn't it? You have this last name. You are involved with this culture. You don't speak the language. It's a huge part, and so you sort of are left out of it, and I think it puts a lot of people off, and I think it makes them sort of want to not really engage in their family's culture, or engage with it on a smaller basis, or just not really have to deal with it or think about it. But for me, it was really important, and I purposefully said, I am going to learn this language, god damn it. And I'm still working on it every day, and but it gets better and better, and that's why this new album is such a really crazy thing.
The new album is all Spanish language. I was listening to it this morning. Or the one I'm talking about the one that's not done yet. Yeah. Because the EP before, there's stuff there's songs in Spanish on that too, right?
That's sort of like
so Fuente de Amor.
Yeah, Fuente de Amor is or Fountain of Love is an EP I put out, and there's selections that are going to be on the new release. Yeah. So it's sort of like a tasting, like a sample.
Now, did you re-record some of those songs that were on the EP, or did you just kind of take the songs from the EP to move on to the full length?
I remix. I'm remixing them, and I'm also adding some other things.
Okay, so it's different. Sort of a reimagining right there of the tracks. No, I
mispronounced a word on one of the songs, so I really have to go back and go back there. And I was talking to my the person I'm working with. Her name's Marangeli Mejias Ravel, and she's been the person who's been working with me on all the translations and pronunciation. And that one, for some reason, just got away from us.
Yeah.
And she said, "I'm really, really sorry that." I was like, "It's
Well, there's
done.
a lot of
It's
words,
done."
and you got all the other ones right.
Yeah, I think. Hey, I got the other ones right. It's just that one.
99%.
But it's enough. I think for some people, like you hear it and you're just like, ugh.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true. And you seem to want to embrace an authenticity, at least of the language, so that you don't sound like a tourist, I guess.
Yeah, I'm trying to market it to a Spanish-speaking audience. Trying to market it to something called the Latin alternative.
That's starting to become a bit of a thing now too.
Yeah.
I'm noticing that just with more bands, because obviously, obviously, white culture is highly represented in everything, and in the entertainment world, especially over the last 40, 50 years, black culture is definitely a lot more part of it, in the rise of hip hop and things like, and soul and R&B. And it always seems like, at least to me, Latino music seems to be made for and consumed entirely by other Latinos, and there doesn't seem to be too much crossover unless you really go broad, like a Ricky Martin or Christina Aguilera or and like the big ones.
Well, the thing that's interesting about the Latin alternative scene is it can be anything. It can be anything.
Yeah.
There are no rules. You can do whatever you want and slap that label on it if you are of Latin origin or your music has something of Latin origin.
So you could be a punk band or a hard rap band, but if you're a bunch of Latino guys or girls, you can be like, oh, but we're Latin alternative.
Yeah, and that's been my impression only because of the Latin Alternative Music Conference that happens every year in New York City.
Okay.
And it's every July, and I got to go to 2 of them, and the one last year was really, really fun. I haven't been able to do a showcase yet, but it's run by a record label called Nacional, and they basically use it as a platform to market their acts. I think it's really smart. But that's it. There's a lot of wonderful, wonderful acts that go through there. So you have bands from all over Latin America and the U.S. and other parts of the world that come over, and they either are their music is either in Spanish or they're Latino people that sing in both English and in Spanish or in French sometimes.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. And probably the biggest thing when you listen to Latin alternative is that you hear a lot of electronic music. And, a lot of rock bands, because the first thing would be like, rock en español was like a big thing. So it was just, that's kind of what it was. And then I think with the internet and with American music being so huge in Latin America, they listen to a lot of American music. A lot of people were influenced by that and are making their own music, like Julieta Venegas. She's really huge, but she only sings in Spanish. I see her as the Mexican Susan Vega.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's just,
she has the same kind of singing. Her songs are beautiful. Like her first album made me think of Susan Vega's first album.
Yeah, that kind of that understated folk thing. I love that first Suzanne Vega record.
Yeah.
I love a lot of Suzanne Vega records.
Yeah, so listen to Julieta Venegas.
I will.
She's really great.
I'm writing it down.
Yeah, she did a huge MTV Unplugged show.
Oh, cool.
And
I was surprised to find that still happens. That MTV Unplugged is still a thing.
Well, Mexico is now what I feel like they're experiencing what I experienced back in the 90s.
Oh, kind of like a alternative.
Yeah, like
an alternative explosion. Yeah,
because they had major acts like one of my favorites is Juan Son, who is like he was in a bunch of bands and then he put out his own release, and he's sort of, to me, like the male version of Björk.
Okay,
but
so like very kind of avant arrangements and that's like almost like a primitivism at times.
I think it's lovely. It's very.
I don't mean primitivism in a in a way to lessen it at all, but like Björk at times seems to embrace the primal nature of music.
I agree 100%, and I think what he does is, on top of that, he lends a long history of magical realism in his lyrics writing, in his lyrical writing.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, because like from literature and film and stuff that's come out of Mexico. Because a lot of my favorite Mexican film is it's not just straight It's not straight
Yeah.
film. It's a lot of weird.
Yeah, like I think most recently I think of El Laberinto de la Fauna, which is the Pan's Labyrinth film,
Yeah.
and El Orfanato, which is the orphanage, and I think they were both done by Guillermo del Toro.
Yeah, it's Guillermo del Toro.
And then you also have, of course, the classic literature, Gabriel Garcia Marquez and 100 Years of Solitude and Isabel Allende. All those people had such a huge influence in like the psychology of Latin literature. And then it was famous. It became famous in the U.S. And then I think that this is just like the after effect, you know, of all those things coming together. And you hear that, and yeah, there's lots of really great music, alternative music coming out of Latin America. And so I guess I'm just trying to make an album that is sort of can, I guess, fit into that world, you know, because it's an audience that I haven't really tapped into, and the albums I've made in the past, they only got so far. I could never really take them very far.
Yeah.
And so I'm just trying something different.
Yeah.
Really.
Well, from listening to it this morning, I mean, you can definitely hear the cello, and the cello is the focal point in instrument right there. So you definitely get like that legato elegance of, you know, a deep-bodied string instrument.
Mm-hmm.
But when I can remember, it was you or Steve who told me that he's like, oh, well, he mixes electronic with it too. And when I hear that, sometimes I kind of be like, okay, like, so what do we got here? We got a little, you know, 8084 on the floor, electronic drum part behind that. You play the cello. In my mind, just from being a music snob, my thought was like, all right, boring, moving on. But your particular approach to like the electronics and the textures are very non-pop. I think of like the more avant electronic stuff. I hear a little bit of Aphex Twin in there. Definitely a lot of like Radiohead and Tom York, like that, the kind of electronic percussion elements they put on. Really, really hard gated electronic sounds. So it's almost sounds like, doesn't even sound like musical parts. It sounds like just noise or bits of sounds put together, but they're rhythmic. I really enjoy that aspect of it.
Cool. Thank you.
Am I at all hitting any of the notes there in terms of influence for where the electronic elements come from?
I've never tried. I've had to educate myself a lot about electronic tools for music making. And my motive for the arrangements was heavily influenced by early music. And I was trying to find a way to make the electronic sounds imitate early music percussion as much as possible, and then add some other elements to it. That's why a lot of them have the 1 and the 3 as opposed to the 2 and the 4.
Yeah.
And also why there's a lot of space sometimes between certain parts, like dun 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 boom boom dun 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 boom 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 dun 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 boom dun dun boom boom boom. So like this kind of structure of lots of space with the drum, and then in between to add little textures inside so that it would, you know, keep the song going.
Yeah. But it's not so much a driving beat. You're not trying to make a dance groove out of it. You're just you're trying to use you're using your electronic elements as just another piece of the tonal palette right there. Mm-hmm. And it's a piece of the tonal palette that is almost infinitely customizable. So you definitely have a lot of freedom. It's sometimes perhaps too much freedom to like really kind of talk about rabbit holes again. Like you can sit there and play with a kick drum sound or a bit of like, you know, simple triplet for hours. And then you kind of look up and you're just like, well, that didn't get us anywhere. Or it turns out the thing that you're doing at first was just like, that was what we wanted to do all along.
I see it. I feel like a scientist in a lab, and I'm experimenting, and I have an idea, but I know it's not going to be exactly what I have in my head, but I'm not going to force it.
You just try to get close.
Yeah, and most of the time what I get from just the limitations of the software, or mostly the limitations of my understanding of the software, sometimes brings things that I wouldn't have thought of before. And I thought it was cool, you know, and I thought it was really, really fun. And I really enjoyed trying to blend the strings with that. And Like, that took me forever.
Yeah.
To
It's
to
true,
learn how
because
to do that.
sometimes when people do attempt to bring, the more organic of instruments, and I don't think you get much more organic of an instrument than a cello. But when they try to bring the organic instruments in with the electronic, sometimes you can just hear the space between them. You can just well, that was done in one place and that was done on a laptop, and you mashed them together and brought them at the same volume, and here we are. But your stuff definitely sounds like it sits together. You definitely made choices, which, in digital recording, sometimes we hold off on choices for as long as we can because we have the luxury of not really having to be hard and fast and stuff. It'd be like, well, I got 6 takes literally stacked underneath that. I can pull them out at any point. At some point, you have to just be like, this is the thing. This is what it's going to sound like, and this is what I'm going to put out.
Yeah, I think that comes from string arranging.
Yeah.
And also playing chamber music. And that kind of music, you just have these voices, and these voices have to do a lot.
Yeah.
And when I write for the cello, the song has to work for the cello and the voice alone.
Mm-hmm.
If it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And everything gets built around it.
I was going to ask you
In
how
that way.
an arrangement comes about to you. Like, when you sit down with a song, do you kind of have a large part of the arrangement in your head already, or do you just have the bare bones, the vocal melody, obviously the lyrics, and some sort of, I guess it's similar to someone who writes on the acoustic guitar or writes on the piano. You've got your kind of block chords in there. You know kind of the basis of where we're going to go here, and then we're going to go here, and then here's the chorus, and then here's back to this thing.
Well, I stole a lot of ideas for this one.
No, stealing's great.
I spend a lot of time with the concept, and I spend a lot of time just gathering information.
Mm-hmm.
And this album in particular, I was trying really hard to make it so that, I guess I should talk a little bit about what the album, this particular one is about. It's called La Dolorosa.
Yeah,
the one that I'm writing, and the songs are based on prayers to these different virgins of Latin America.
Oh, okay.
But I've taken them and I've broken them down to the bare bones, almost like the words don't make complete sentences. They've become so abstract that there's so much more about just the feeling, or the raw emotive passages of these prayers. So there's a lot of things where it's just so open-ended. So then, but the context of them is underneath all of it. And all the songs are inspired by paintings that I saw from the School of Cusco, which is the first indigenous workshop in Latin America that created these images and statues devoted to the church. But from a cultural standpoint, it is such a wonderful story about the marriage of all these different cultures coming together and creating something totally new, something that is, I believe, the nucleus of what is, Latin American.
Mm-hmm.
And in essence, the songs, I think I'm trying to just capture that essence, and then in turn, the songs and the structures came about from all the different historical influences. So a lot of these paintings were made in Baroque era. So a lot of the cello parts I took from Baroque music, and I would flip a cello line, or I would take a line from a bass part from a Baroque piece and then turn it inside out. And then I had the lyrics, and then I would make a cello arrangement, just experimenting again, just playing with the different parts I collected, and then inventing a piece out of it. And then all the vocal, I would have the lyrics in front of me, and then I would just go for it with the vocals, and I would create all these different versions of what the vocal part could be until I settled into something that I felt was really strong.
It sounds like the bones are the most important part to you.
Mm-hmm.
But in order to get there, you had to assimilate so many other elements. So what comes out on the record, or even probably what comes out when you were, if you were to just sit down and play the song just you and a cello, what would come out sounding simple and basic required
a whole lot of work just to even get to the point to have it sounded like you had to teach, like you said, having to teach yourself how to speak Spanish, or having to learn how to speak Spanish. You had to kind of teach yourself how to speak your record before you could make your record.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting way to think about that right there. I think so often people say, like, well, just write what you know, and you seem more interested, like, well, no, let me go learn everything about what I don't know so that then I do know it, and then I can write about it.
Yeah, that's basically exactly it. A
Yeah.
lot of research, a lot of time. I mean, it was all brought about by an exhibition I did, and I made these paintings, and I made an animated piece, and I was writing the music for the animated portion. That was a projection in the gallery, and then that started off the whole series of songs, which is now turning into an album. That at first I was thinking, you know, I'll do a few in Spanish and then I'll do the rest in English. But when I tried to write the songs in English, I don't know what it was. Like,
it just wasn't translating.
It wasn't working.
Yeah.
And I didn't know why, but the ones that were in Spanish, it was just like they had the best melodies. I don't know why I was able to invent it just came out like that.
You think there's something in the language that's rooted into the mythos that you're working with and into the imagery? You think that's what it is right there?
I like to think that it is.
Yeah.
I tried to analyze it and I just stopped trying to analyze it, because there's sometimes I think things are meant to be, and I personally believe that every artist, well, I can speak for myself, that I look at what I do sometimes and I think, why on earth am I doing this? Like, I don't understand it, but I feel more like a vessel that is being used by something greater than myself to make something, and I'm making it. Maybe I don't know why I'm making it right now, but I think it will reveal itself later.
Yeah.
And then I just know that I have to make it. And I just know that this is something that, despite you know, not being able to afford it, or not being able to, or, you know, taking up all these different nights, you know, and squeezing it in between my day job and then working with other bands and other things like that. I just, this project really, I stopped a couple times and thought, why am I making this again?
Yeah.
I can't remember why.
And
I just
even
know I have to do it.
And even when you finish it, sometimes you think like, well, who is this even for? But at first you can't even think like that. You just have to be like, well, this is for me. I'm just going to make this for me. And then later we'll figure out what else to do with it.
Yeah.
Like if it's human in it's human in nature. If it's honest in nature, then you're going to find it's going to resonate with people. It's going to be, because all people are the same really when you get down to it. We're all very different, but we're all afraid of the same things. We all want the same things. So if you can tap into that right there, and it sounds like if you're tapping into the element of Latin American spirituality, in that lies in the roots of all spirituality everywhere, regardless of, you know, Christian or Judaism or Buddhism or Islam or whatever. Like there's still that underlying current of what is truth, why are we here, what are we doing, and what happens next. So, I mean, I can't imagine it falling flat on its face out of lack of interest. I can imagine a lot of people, this resonating with people, because I was listening to it. I don't know. I mean, I speak a decent amount of Spanish to a point. Not so much when it's sung. I really have to see it written down in order for me to sort of take it apart. Which is to say that when I was listening to your music, I didn't necessarily understand all the words, but that even at that point didn't matter, because I could hear the tones and I could hear the emotion going on in the melodies, and clearly understand roughly what you were trying to say without really understanding the words. And I think if I can do that, then other people can do that too.
That's great. That's great.
I'm not particularly smart when it comes to that stuff, so hopefully other people will be able to get it as well.
Oh, that would be wonderful.
Yeah. So what do you do with it when it's, well, I hate to ask you that right now, because that's the worst question to ask someone while they're in the midst of it, but like what are you going to do with it when it's done?
What happened was I was making the album, and then I was like, oh, maybe I should promote this via the Latin alternative music thing, simply because the songs want to be in the Spanish language. And then I thought, I think with this album, I'm trying to do things in a very different way from how I've made albums in the past. It's the first time I've done it completely, like really completely by myself. in the past, whenever I've made albums, I used to be in bands, but it was like it was almost like the person I was working with, I wrote the songs and then it went through his filter.
Yeah.
His sound filter. And I did 2 albums with him. And
who's him?
Oh, him. I'm sorry. His name is Ted. He used to own a record label. He used to own a studio called Cedar Tree Studios.
Oh, yeah.
And
Ted. What's Ted's last name?
Richardson.
Oh, I know Ted. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, cool.
So I used to work with Ted Richardson, and he, I don't know, like it was sort of like a relationship that in the beginning was almost like little brother, big brother,
Mm-hmm.
but then over
he's been around for quite a while. He's very knowledgeable. He sounds like he would be a great person to kind of just be like, I have these unformed things.
Mm-hmm.
Just help me kind of start to get it together.
Yeah. Well, that was the thing. It's like he was so good at the let's make the record part, but then when I wanted to take it to the next place, which was, the marketing and this and that,
Mm-hmm.
it sort of became I started to realize I have no control. Everything is out of my control, and without getting too much into it, I felt it was better to just sort of part ways, because I felt that things were not really working out, and so I felt bad about it, but I felt it was the right thing to do.
Yeah, no, there's just because you start working with one person doesn't mean that one person you need to work with in every other aspect for the rest of your life. And I think that's something that as musicians we learn at one point or another, oftentimes with a bit of difficulty, and there's a bit of heartbreak in it, because you don't want to hurt anyone's feeling, especially when you respect everyone as artists and as knowledgeable people.
Yeah.
You don't want to be like, well, this isn't personal, because
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to take. It's hard not to take it personal. Like on either side of either side of that equation right there, for someone to be like, well, I'm not going to work with you anymore, because you're just like, even if it's for professional reasons, or it's just like, I want to kind of take this into one place. It still sucks because everyone's worked together.
Yeah, I just think it wasn't something that was overnight. It took a long time. I mean, it was like over almost 10 years.
Oh, wow.
And, I just started to feel like, I'm trying to say it without sounding like a victim, but I sort of did feel like a victim in some ways.
Well, at some point you feel like you lose control when you start bringing in other people, but those people might not necessarily be wresting control away from you for malicious purposes. They may also feel as much ownership over this stuff as you do.
Yeah, and I think that breaks up a lot of bands.
Oh,
all the time.
Precisely.
Yeah,
that happens all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I could give you a list of bands I've been in where that has been the case, where someone says at someone's point, someone says, well, this is mine, but someone says like, well, yes, but and that is the and I think if you're not getting paid too, that's also
well, that's another story.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm talking more. I'm talking more about my end of it too. Yeah, it is tricky too, and then assigning value and who gets what and all that.
Mm-hmm.
It's oftentimes I want to look at that and just be like, that's probably one of the bigger reasons I stopped engaging in music as being a full-time thing or the way to make money in my life, because I love it so much. I've seen what happens to things that you love when they become your job, and you really have to fret over them, not just for like, oh, well, I don't think this is artistically perfect, or I want to fret over that way, but when you're fretting over numbers and money and other people and things like that, at some point you just want to throw your hands in the air and just be like, this isn't worth it.
Yeah, especially if music is almost like if it's almost like a religion, and it's
if you've got to do it anyway.
Yeah, and I've felt like this new album felt like it was really freeing, because it felt like I was making a painting. It felt exactly the same, where when I made albums before, it was like studio time. You have this much time. You got to do this this.
Clock's
and then,
running, yeah.
And then it's like, do this part again. It's almost like, in action. Oh, I got to get it right. And then like in this way, I felt like I do it in my room. I take things away. I put things in. I feel different the next day, and
no one's watching.
No
one's
watching you. Yeah,
and that sometimes can be great. There's something to be said for also making
making art on the clock and like developing the amount of discipline sometimes that
Yeah.
it takes to be able to do that. And that's a necessary trait too.
Mhm.
But you have that discipline in other ways, because you have
Mhm.
that discipline in your playing and your technicality, because you came from that
Mhm.
from classical school, which is all about discipline
Mhm.
and about like playing things this way, and this is your technique. And you wouldn't be able to subvert the technique or play around, like you said before, taking bass lines from, you know, Baroque music and turning them on their head. You have to have an understanding of Baroque music before you can turn it on its head.
Mhm.
You have to have an understanding about all the themes of Latin American, you know, virgins and sainthood before you can choose how to assimilate it into your art. I think that's something that gets missing sometimes when people want the idea and they want to have the finished thing, but no one really wants to do the follow through to actually really learn it and then take it apart.
And that's so much fun.
Yes.
The process is really
once you get
fun.
there, it's fun. But I can understand why it seems daunting to people to be like, I just want it to be done. You're just like, well, it's not how it works. You
Yeah.
actually have to work at it.
Yeah, I couldn't believe how making a record could feel like making a painting. And when
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm gonna make it like this forever from
Yeah.
now on, because it's such a great process.
It is fun to make
really
it
great.
make it on your own. And the other great thing about no one watching and the clock not running is you're just like, no one cares when this comes out except you.
Yeah.
You get to work to your own expectations and your own level, and if at any point you want to completely change those, you can. And no one knows that you changed it, and no one knows that like this record should have come out 2 years ago or something like that.
Right.
It doesn't matter. You just put it out, and then you don't talk about it if you don't want to. And when people say like, how long did it take to make the record? It's like, oh, it took a while. Like, who cares? Listen to the record. How does it matter how long a record took to make?
Right.
When you listen to it, you know,
Because some great records take years, and then other ones don't take long at all.
Yeah.
It doesn't take away from how wonderful they are.
Exactly. Some stuff gets recorded in a weekend, and some stuff takes 8 years.
Mhm.
But in the end, I don't think it matters, as long as it's as silly and traditional. As long as it's good, like, or as long as it resonates with people, then, you know, take a year, take a day. I don't.
Yeah, that's the thing about Kate Bush is.
Years.
She takes
years.
so long, and then when it like I can't believe like when Ariel came out, I
Yeah.
was like, you were making this record for how long?
Yeah, and it does color it a little bit. You're just like, okay.
Yeah.
You have to like divorce. You have to compartmentalize that way and just be
Yeah.
like, I'm not going to think about it. I'm not going to think
Right.
of, and to think about the various things about her and how she does stuff. You just have to just toss that aside and not even really judge things like that on previous work, especially with an artist like Kate Bush or Tori, or Bjork or something like that, who have a massive catalog of work that keeps forever changing.
Mm-hmm.
You can't necessarily listen to the new thing and put it up. I mean, every Kate Bush record I listen to, I put up against Hounds of Love, whether I want to or not. It just
Yeah,
it just
I can
happens.
see that. I can totally see that.
Before we go, I did want to talk real quick because you've played with Rasputina,
Mm-hmm.
which is how I almost met you, actually, because you played that gig.
The
no,
Fleischer gig.
Yeah, the Fleischer gig, which I believe, yes, I set up the entire backline for that and then went off to do whatever it was that I had to do the next day. So I never did get to see that gig. But you mentioned Rasputina back earlier in us talking. How did you end up working with that group? Because that's one of those groups that like not everyone's heard of them, but people who have heard of them or heard them, you definitely remember them.
Yeah, Rasputina is Melora Kreger. It isn't really a band. If you ever play in the band, you are like an employee.
Interesting.
You're like an employee. You are paid for your services, but you have absolutely no creative contribution to it.
She writes it all herself. She writes the charts and everything like that.
I helped with that. You know, I mean, I did provide different services like transcription writing. I assisted in, of course, the recording, and then sort of like, other things, little things here and there, but and I would go on tour and play the show. I created my own costumes because you have to be into the whole Victorian aesthetic.
Yeah.
And that was really fun for me, and I made up for all the Halloweens I missed as a little Christian boy who wasn't allowed to go and trick or treat.
No Halloween growing up.
No Halloween. Well, no trick or treating.
Oh,
no
gotcha.
trick or treating.
Gotcha.
It was really interesting. I thought it was really a good thing to do. It was a really momentous occasion for me to meet her, work with her. And it was only just last year around this time that I decided, I was done and I was going to just move on and do my own thing.
Which I imagine she's had so many people in her ensemble or whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
That must happen often, and as she brings in new people, it probably becomes a little bit of a different ensemble every time, despite the fact that she's writing all of it.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's really interesting. I didn't know that that's how they operated. It's very practical.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't see it as a band. I see it as a project.
Interesting.
I see it as like
more of like an artistic collaboration, and it exists as it's happening, and then as the people peel off, then it's not that thing anymore.
I think so. I really look at it like the way I perceive Smashing Pumpkins. It's almost like it is.
It's a name brand to have on it too, because it's recognizable.
Everybody knows the name, so it's no longer, it's not a band in the same sense that you would think of a band. I mean, it's not like U2 that's been the same four guys like forever. It's not even, or like Pearl Jam. But it's a lot like. It is an idea.
Yeah.
It's an idea, and the person who creates those ideas is central, and all the fans know that, and they love her, and they will buy anything she puts out, and that's good business, and I think it's great.
Well, she definitely has a niche right there with that kind of music. What do they refer to as, like chamber pop or something like that? I can't remember.
It makes me think of chamber pot.
Yes, it's not far off. But it is definitely a niche genre, whatever it is that you call it.
She's been called the mother of freak folk. She's been called goth, industrial. It's like all kinds of. I've seen articles, and it's just like.
I think a lot of that stuff gets tossed in because of the certain fan base that it attracted and things like that. I wouldn't necessarily ever, from a musical standpoint, ever apply the terms. Even Gothic for them, I would think more you want to get historical, be like, well, actually, it's more Victorian than Gothic. They're separated by a couple of 100 years.
Yes, it's true. Or rather, I should say, like goth, like the Marilyn Manson, like the people who got into her, that were from the Marilyn Manson era. And then but went along.
Yeah.
And then it was like just different people from all different walks of life. But I found a lot of wonderful history lovers, artists.
Because the costumes come from it too. And so that's like you're in right there. Someone who like modern heteronormative rock music wouldn't appeal to it all because there's nothing in there for them. But if they're into costumes and things like that, and then you see a band like Rasputina, that's probably like you're in right there. You're just like, well, they're into something that I'm into as well.
Well, when I joined what I saw was a time where people who were young in their like maybe teens and 20s now are bringing their children to enjoy the music.
Oh, that's great.
And so it became intergenerational, and it was a joy to meet all those people and to get to meet people that she used to collaborate with. And it was a gig. It was just a gig. You show up, you did the show, and then you went home, and then she'd call you for the next one, and you did the job, you got paid, and that was it. And you pay taxes on it and all that stuff.
Well, no, it is, but it's a little bit more in the classical. I don't mean classical music, but the older way of the music business, where there were players, session players, live players, and you got called. If you were in the Ohio Horns, or like there were, or whatever like collective of people, you would get called, and if the other guy couldn't do it and you got called, then you were in that horn. You were in Tower of Power that night, or you were in James Brown that night. That's really interesting. I didn't know that was how she operated. That's really cool.
Yeah, I have absolutely I didn't write anything really for any of the things that were released. I mean,
but you're on it and you played it.
I'm on it and I played it. I thought it was a really great experience, and I learned a lot about sort of certain ways in which you can you can sort of operate on your own kind of like mom and pop shop style of running a band and what that looks like.
Yeah. Did you tour a lot with them?
Mm-hmm.
Did you go outside the country?
Mm-hmm. I only got to do the UK tour, and then we did one stop in Paris.
Oh wow.
And that was really cool. And we toured with the Smoke Fairies.
I'm familiar.
They're wonderful. These two young ladies who play guitar and sing, and they write beautiful, haunting melodies, and their records are they're wonderful. They did do they do U.S. tours quite regularly. So and they do play Philadelphia. So the next time they come down, you can check them out.
Cool. Well, I think we got to pretty much everything.
Okay.
More or less. Unless I don't know. It's always hard to tell. I always have a pile of things, and I just kind of let it go.
Yeah, as I was listening to the show, I'm like, oh, they just talk about whatever.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's seemingly an element of structure that I try in no way to be revealed, even to you.
Yeah, I just went for it.
No. That's great. No, you've got a really cool story and really unique, just a really unique approach to not just as a player of music, but to come at it from visual art too. Because your visual art is big too. You've got almost as much of that up on your website as you do of your music, and you obviously went to school for it and trained for it as well. And I think that furthers my. It's not a theory, just my hard fought belief that nowadays as an artist you can't just be one thing anymore. And that's not to say that everyone who plays the guitar also has to know how to draw, but like you can't just be you can't just be a guitar player, you can't just be a cellist, and you can't just be a painter anymore. Because if anything else, you have to be your own
engineer.
Yeah, you have your own engineer, your own producer, your own PR, your own tour management. And it helps to have other artistic aspects play a part in whatever your main artistic focus is. So if you play music, it's nice to know that it's nice to bring the visual art into it. If you're a visual artist who can, who dabbles in piano, like you can bring that into it as well.
Oh, absolutely. I don't believe in I call it being multidisciplinary. And I think that most artists are already. I just point it out because if you got if there's a job I can do, I would like to have the opportunity to do it. And, and I, primarily a cellist, but I also play the violin. And all the music lessons I've ever taught were for violin because that's what was more in demand.
Yeah, there's a lot more. Well, there's a lot more violinists in the orchestra, so
It's true. Or a lot more. I mean, I taught all little girls, and
oh really?
Yeah, like I felt like Vivaldi at the little orphanage, and I teaching all the little girls and writing songs for them, and because I was trying to make it fun and not so academic, and I was really doing everything the opposite of how I was taught because I knew that not everybody would really gravitate towards the more academic things. It's just like. You're playing a song. It's music, but secretly it's an exercise.
Secretly you're learning.
I'm calling it cheesecake land, or like the fairy princess, and you're really playing a scale.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
You have to kind of manipulate kids a bit into learning the real stuff. Mm-hmm. But then once they do it, I'm sure they get into it, and then it's off to the races.
They really,
from there.
Once they get into it, like show them Vivaldi, and the rest is history. As soon as they get to Vivaldi, that's it. Like, because I had this one girl, and that's all she wanted to play, like that first Vivaldi violin concerto. she was caught. She got the bug.
Awesome. Do you want to play?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Let's get you set up for that. Excellent. Well, Daniel, thank you so much for
you.
coming. Thank you so much for being the first non-guitar player to play on the show. There's a limit to things that people can play in the middle of my living room. So.
Yeah. I mean, you're gonna have to find that kalimba quartet doing Radiohead covers.
There we go. You help me find that. That's next week.
Okay.
Daniel, thanks so much for sitting down with us.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome.
We'll be together till the end of time. 25
Well, all right there. That was outstanding. Daniel De Jesus. Awesome dude. Cellist, songwriter, good human being, painter, artist. Daniel De Jesus, artist. That's all we have to do right there. You can check out all his art endeavors, musical and otherwise, at his website, celloeye.com. That's CELLOEYE.com. Celloeye. And you can also check out all the links for his stuff on the Friends and Neighbors page of 25o'clockpod.com. That's your one-stop shop for everyone who's ever been on 25 O'Clock. Anyway, great to sit down with him. I hope you enjoyed it. And, wow, I don't have much else for you. I'm going to recap some of the links I gave you at the top of the show, just so you can hear them again. If you like the music of Daniel De Jesus, of course, go to celloeye.com. Also, go to his SoundCloud, which is soundcloud.com/Daniel De Jesus. He has a new single called Divine Rapture, and that's a free download right there. His art book, he has a new art book called The Goddess and Her Occult of Beauty. That's at www.blurb.com. Go search for either Daniel De Jesus or The Goddess and Her Occult of Beauty. And he'll be performing at Flannelpalooza Chuckocella here in Philadelphia, Thursday, June 11th, 8 p.m. and 11 p.m. That's at the Figment Theater, 1219 Vine Street here in Philadelphia. I'm put a link up for that as well at 25o'clockpod.com. I should maybe reach out to those guys, see if we can have a little cross-pollination, cross-promotion, perhaps. But anyway, in the meantime, that's all I got for this week. No Philadelphia music this week, unfortunately. I'm going to get right back on that in the next episode, so I apologize for those of you who look forward to it. It's coming next time. Anyway, this has been 25 O'Clock. My name is Dan Drago. It was good to be here. It's good to be in this new place. It's good to be a lot of things. I'll catch you all in a couple of weeks here on 25 O'Clock.